morning, campers. This is episode 2 of Pop Culture Graveyard Podcast, featuring my good friend, Dave Horowitz, and me, Hollis James. And this week, we are both so excited. We moved this up in the rotation. One of our favorite coming-of-age films, Meatballs from 1979, starring Bill Murray, his first starring role, directed by Ivan Reitman. Am I correct in saying this is our favorite movie ever about camp?
Yeah, about camp.
About camp, sure. Specifically.
Yeah,
from 1979.
Yeah, I like it more than Friday the 13th.
This is the antithesis or the flip side, the inverse of Friday the 13th. This is when everything goes right at camp.
Right.
How old were you when you first saw this movie?
Oh, that's going to be a toughie. I can maybe say whether I saw it in the theater. Back then, didn't you always see them in the theater?
I remember seeing it on video for the first time. Like, I want to say like 83, 84, something like that.
That's probably me too. I doubt my parents took me to see Meatballs.
Yeah. We didn't see things that only I wanted to see as a family.
Yeah.
There's so many things I love about this picture. I think the one thing that hooked me that I didn't have the vocabulary for at the time. First of all, Bill Murray is the ideal friend if you're like a 9, 10-year-old, whatever. He's what you aspire to. He's cool in a way you can't put into words yet. He's the older brother, but he's actually not. He's a grown-ass man. And this is the primordial sludge that would blossom into Rushmore years later, where Bill Murray as an adult is on a level playing field with, in this case, Chris Makepeace as an 11-year-old, a 12-year-old?
Sure.
And later on, he would be on a level playing field with Max Fisher, Jason Schwartzman in Rushmore. And it's kind of that same kind of respect paid to kids, not dumbing it down, not talking down to them, not kind of, here's a few scenes for the kids to laugh at, here's a few scenes for the adults. They're both on that level playing field. And I really love the way that relationship is portrayed. And I'm hard-pressed to find a movie in the 70s or early 80s that kind of respected kids in the same way.
Yeah. My guess is that the reason I felt a quick and heavy connection with Meatballs is because I wished that Tripper had been my counselor.
Yeah.
I was sent to camp.
Or parents, or uncle,
or brother,
or anything.
Yeah. I was sent to camp. The camp owners came to our house and showed a movie, which is something they did. You'd be considering going to this camp in Maine, and the people who ran the camp would come to your house with a projector, and they'd show you a movie to convince you to go to this camp.
Oh my God, are you serious? They tried to recruit you like you were like some basketball
You were basically
prodigy?
recruited. Part of it might be the parents would be like, I don't think he'll go for it. In my case, that might have been it a little. We want him to want to go. And they were like, we'll come by. We'll show him the movie. Trust me, they love the movie. And the movie did look amazing. In the movie, there was a skateboard half pipe.
Oh my God.
I didn't skateboard at the time, but I was like, oh, maybe I'll learn how to skateboard.
Mm-hmm.
There was this thing called murder ball that they showed, which was played on a soccer field, but the ball was like literally 9 feet tall, taller than the campers. Some kind of lightweight ball-shaped cage wrapped in canvas.
Oh, weird.
So it was like a giant lightweight boulder on the field.
Mm-hmm.
And you had to get it across their line, and there were rules and stuff. And I was like, that looks incredible.
Right.
What I didn't want to do was go to camp and play soccer, baseball, and football.
Right.
Guess what you did at this camp?
Man, that
all
film
day,
was bullshit.
All day, every day, you play soccer, football, and baseball. Yeah. The murder ball was like this moldy thing in a shed.
You know what? That makes sense because they're playing you a film that was cut together 10 years earlier. You're watching like kids prior to the hippie movement. Oh, that's such a bill of goods.
And in the 1970s, nobody's updating their camp reel.
Yeah.
You know, you're not bringing in another film crew to make another video because you've changed your...
I mean, they set up a projector, for Christ's sakes. Like,
yeah.
You knew that was old stuff.
Yeah. They also had tennis, and they had clay courts.
Oh, weird.
So I took a BMX bike in the rain, rode it around on the clay courts, and got sent home.
You got your revenge.
Yeah. I basically set out to get sent home and did get sent home.
Wow, nicely done. I was not a camp kid. This will be very interesting. Two perspectives on this camp movie. One from a camp kid yourself, and one from a city kid who never went to camp. I did, however, watch those great commercials. Do you remember them for Young People's Day Camp?
Oh my
That
God,
they would
yes.
play?
Yeah.
That looked like the most fun place on earth.
I went to one of
And
those.
did you? Oh, that's
In
great.
Yonkers. Yeah, I went to one of those
Did it
in
live up
Yonkers.
to it?
I would remember hating it. And I
Okay.
don't remember hating it. It was a very young, it was a very early on. But I will
Wow.
say this, the pickup in the parking lot, the
Mhm.
drop off where the buses are in a line and Rudy is sitting on his suitcase,
Yeah.
identical to what actually happened.
Okay. Totally
it was
realistic.
Totally realistic. The cabins, super realistic.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised that they nailed the realism. It was filmed at a real camp in, I think, Ontario. I think it's like White Pine or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Two different periods. They filmed with the camp going on with actual campers because they couldn't get extras. So they kind of used all the campers while they could. And then they filmed some scenes with just the CITs and some close-up scenes once all the campers had left. So you're getting the real uncut camp experience on film. And a lot of those kids, because they didn't want like actory types, a lot of those kids are actual campers, and it's phenomenal. Like the girl who does the gossip, who stands up and talks about gossip, and then she plays softball or whatever they played.
Yeah.
That's an actual kid they found, and she's phenomenal.
I'm not surprised. I didn't know that, but when she stands up on the cafeteria table, I didn't realize she's the same girl who says, "Guess who got her period?" in the cabin. But when she stands up and says that, I'm like, oh, this girl is so good. That's exactly what that girl would be like.
Yeah, she's
and it's
great.
Because she is her. Yeah.
Yeah. It's such an odd mix of actors because it's a Canadian film and they went up there to get tax breaks and all the other reasons you go to Canada. For that reason alone, it was the highest grossing Canadian film, I think, until Porky's took over. But it's very much an American production as well. A few of the actors were American, but a lot of them were Canadian. One of the actresses, do you know Christine DeBelle, who played...
I saw her name in the credits because I was watching more closely than normal.
She played A.L., I think is her character's name. One previous credit from 76 was the X-rated Alice in Wonderland.
Mm-hmm.
She did hardcore in that movie. She did it off screen with the director, and then he cut it into the movie. Horrible guy. Anyway, back then, that was not a death knell for your career. Right. It was such a cool time because now she's in this movie 3 years later or whatever with kids in the movie, and she's great in it. I think
she's wholesome as could be.
Wholesome as can be. You see the poster, and it's Bill Murray, that great poster flanked by all these women, and I think one is on his back, and they're all around him. And it just reads as such a sexy movie, but it was PG at the time. I remember as a kid feeling like it was kind of risque, but it's just all innuendo and leering looks and whatever. It walks that fine line between totally clean movie and kind of, you know, a little something that you feel you're kind of getting away with as a young kid watching the movie, which is pretty cool.
I was thinking exactly that. I was thinking there's things that really pointed out well. For instance, when Fink and Spaz go to, pardon that word, I'm referring to this character Spaz, and I understand that word has connotations. But Fink and Spaz go to the girl's cabin to listen. They climb under the cabin.
Not even to look and leer.
Not even to look. They go to listen. That's so sweet. And they want to hear what girls say when they're alone. Yeah,
because they want to kind of try to solve the mystery of girls, you know? And even in the language, Fink is always like telling Spaz, she wants it. Yeah. And if you held Fink down and asked him, what is it? He wouldn't be able to tell you.
Yeah, he doesn't know exactly what
There's a charm to their ignorance. It's more innocence than ignorance.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm not surprised that you mentioned Porky's overtook.
Everything after Porky's was much...
Porky's took the idea of, like, kids will go see a movie because it appears to have some stuff in it that they can't get from the movies they're not allowed to go to and things. Mm-hmm. Like, I was trying to put together in my head, like, what is Meatballs? It's like, it's Porky's meets after school special, but the after school special portion of it is what's important. That's Rudy, Chris Makepeace, his theme song, the Best Friend song.
Yeah, Mary McGregor.
Which just feels so after school special.
And I should hate that song. I should cringe every time it comes on. It's from another time and it sounds like it. It's syrupy and cloying and trite, and I fucking love it.
If you're listening and you're wondering how the song goes, it goes, if you let me, I can be a good friend.
Oh, yeah. Hitting the high note.
It comes in these places where it's perfect. I'll say it again. I went to camp. Mm-hmm. I needed Tripper. Tripper wasn't there. Had Tripper been there, camp would have been great for me. I got picked on.
Wow.
Yeah,
so you had yet to shoot up.
Well, no, I had decent size, but I was skinny. And all the counselors were Phil. No, Phil? Who's the blonde kid who says, I know? When they say Rudy sucks, he goes, I know.
That sounds right. Yeah, Phil.
I didn't have
Tripper.
Tripper, but I also didn't have I'll take care of your frog.
Right.
The other guys, they were nice too to the kids.
You know what's great about that song too? It highlights the vulnerability of the character because it's such an open song lyrically and such a gorgeous song musically that it's just, Rudy's theme. When it comes on, you just feel for him instantly.
Yeah, it gets you.
Yeah, it really does.
You remember a record called Free to Be You and Me?
Was it Kermit or something?
It was. It was various stars. It was Rosie Greer sang "It's All Right to Cry."
Oh yeah.
Mel Brooks did a bit about the difference between boys and girls. It was
I do vaguely remember
talking.
that. Wasn't it like it gets better before it gets better? It was that kind of vibe.
Yeah, it was kind of like that. It was just a record for kids to learn. It touched on some pretty cool stuff. That song reminds me of something that would be on that record.
Yeah, in general.
And Chris Makepeace has that feel. I think you like her.
I think of the movie as Bill Murray making this kid his project and building his self-esteem up and sending him out as the person that he's meant to be. Never occurred to me that it also worked the other way. This time around, I heard all sorts of stuff. Rudy enabled Bill Murray's character to be open enough to get into a relationship with Roxanne. And
Kate Lynch, I believe.
Kate Lynch, who is great and holds her own opposite Bill Murray, which is tough for anybody, actor-wise, to do. But I didn't really catch that when I was younger and watched the film or in subsequent viewings. Rudy really softens Bill Murray as much as Bill Murray toughens up Rudy's backbone. Mm-hmm. And that's lovely. It's a give and take.
He goes to the dance. He goes to the social, always having just left Rudy, who said, you like her. Just admit it. You like her.
Yeah.
So then he goes with that's the last thing in his mind, and he's going to see Roxanne. And I think it's great because a lot of these movies from that time and 10 years in either direction have that theme of if a girl says no, just keep at it.
Oh, God, yeah.
Which is terrible.
Which is horrible.
Yeah, and that, like, you can wear her down mentality. I'm rewatching it, having not seen it in 20 years, and I'm worried that that's the territory of Bill. And he goes into some rough territory.
Yeah, we're going to get into that.
Yeah, but I'm worrying about that. And then he has a couple moments where he stops being funny and says something honest. And he says to Roxanne, after joking about trying for 3 years, he says, "Well, I'm trying." He says it kind of honestly, and she says, "Well, keep trying." Which I'm like, "Oh, that's great." It's not trying when she says no. Right. She says, keep trying. And once she says that, I'm like, oh, thank God she said that. Because it's okay for him to keep trying. And I'm like, that movie, a little bit ahead of its time. Hey, let's have the woman green light his...
That's what it is.
His attempts.
It's the green light that makes it okay.
The green light is just a little late.
Little late. And also, I had trouble a couple of times where he, gives her all kinds of manhandling.
I checked. It's 2 minutes long. That's a lot.
It's long. And then, of course, Morty comes in and he plays the victim, and it's played for laughs. And it's not cool.
It's not cool.
Watching it. It was not cool. And here's the problem. You can't take that movie out of its time. Anyone listening, you just have to trust us when we say, for the time, it was a lightweight scene. I'm not going to say it was straight out balls to the wall funny, but you were not cognizant of how troublesome that scene was at the time, correct?
And I'll say this too. I'll add to that. I agree with you 100%. And I think it's best to add that we are both glad that it has become a troublesome scene.
Yeah.
That's a good evolution, that society has moved to a new level where Bill Murray weeping about having just been assaulted, he's pretending that Roxanne assaulted him, all done as a bit. I'm glad that scene doesn't work anymore. It's nice that it's not okay.
It's nice that it's not okay. But in the larger sense, there have been reports of Bill Murray being insensitive, for lack of a better word, on several film sets. This is not an anti-Bill Murray section of this podcast, but it bears mentioning that Bill Murray is from a real gonzo school of comedy and a real boys club school of comedy that Bill Murray was an elite practitioner of, along with John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd and Chevy Chase and everyone else who came up in a school of comedy where women were marginalized a lot of the time, even when they broke through on shows like SNL. So it bears mentioning, and we're not going to belabor the point, but not all of Meatballs has aged well. The fact that it still remains a winning film in spite of those few missteps is kind of staggering.
Yeah, it's impressive. If someone said, like, I'm thinking about showing my kid Meatballs, I would say, that sounds fine. There's a couple of scenes that you either will want to explain or skip.
We should also mention that at the time, PG-13 was not yet a thing. So this was PG. So your mileage may vary as a child and or a parent.
When Fink was stuck under the cabin and they
were pantsing him.
They were pantsing him. He was stuck in the dirt and he was having his pants pulled. It was getting deliverance.
I also laughed at something that I had forgotten, whereas he addresses Spaz and said, "What are you doing?"
Right, he thinks Spaz is behind him.
Yeah,
right.
In his mind, it's just Spaz.
Right,
and it takes on a whole different connotation, that scene.
Yeah.
So I like that scene too, because, you know, in most teen sex comedies, which I don't even think was a genre yet, pranks were usually one-sided. There was the peephole prank. There was the panty raid prank. There were very few pranks going the other way. So the fact that the girls got one over on the guys and pantsed a character and raised them up on the flagpole to Bill Murray saying there was a very fat pair of pants on the flagpole. Like, that's pretty cool.
Victory female. In fact, there's not a single misogynist act that isn't met with a response by the women. The men make some comment to the women. The women always have a retort. The women have the last laugh very often in this. Setting aside its mistakes, it has a couple of things that show it's more evolved than a lot of stuff at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, the fact that this guy is the coolest guy in the movie. He's the coolest guy in any movie at the time.
Yeah, this was his first starring role.
Right.
When you take that into consideration, holy hell, he's like fully formed. That's Bill Murray.
In fact, I thought to myself, like, did they ask him, like, just give us a bunch of stripes, give us a bunch of, and it's like, no, he couldn't give them a bunch of that because those weren't made yet.
It's amazing because he isn't Bill Murray yet, and yet he's totally Bill Murray. And everything he'd do beyond this, the following year he did Where the Buffalo Roam, and then he had that role in Caddyshack, where he wasn't even the lead.
Caddyshack, right.
But he stole everything. And then 81, Stripes comes along. And then 2 years later, Ghostbusters. And he's the Bill Murray that we know today. But it's all here, and it's amazing.
Here's this guy who they're like, we know we've got something. We know that he can always be the coolest guy in the room. We know that everybody wishes they were him. Who's his love interest going to be? I love that it's Roxanne. I love that it's this like average.
Yeah.
You know, at the time, I thought that when I was a kid watching that movie, I thought Bill Murray was the handsomest. Like if you had said like you can look like any actor, I would have said I want to look like Bill Murray.
Yeah, you would have had very little competition.
Yeah. and so here I am as a kid thinking this is the coolest couple ever. But I'm mostly thinking that because they're kind and they're funny and they're smart.
Yeah, it's true. It would have been very easy. You and I are always saying, I'm so glad they didn't go Hollywood. But Bill Murray could have been opposite some 23-year-old starlet, one of the most gorgeous, perfect-looking female specimens ever to walk the planet, is in this film. Cindy Gerling, who played Wendy. Breathtakingly gorgeous. If this movie were made even 2 years later, she probably would have been cast as Roxanne. And it would have been like, are you kidding me? Your man crush on Bill Murray aside, it's one of those things where, are you kidding? Bill Murray and her? Like, she's drop dead gorgeous. He's whatever. He's older. She's younger.
Yeah, I easily could have seen Hollywood execs saying, like, how come Bill's not getting one of the hot ones? Like, that's what I picture these guys saying.
They talk that way, too. And they that's not as nice as they say it either. But Roxanne is realistic. And they're of equal aesthetic status, if you want to put it that way. They both.
It's weird to talk about because we're talking about the fact that they're not gorgeous by Hollywood standards or they're not hot.
It's something you have to address, though, because I think it unlocks the film in a way that different casting would not. Across the board, everyone in the film looks like real people. And I love that that extends to the stars as well. It's like you're a fly on the wall at camp.
The casting is... you mentioned, and I read, because I did a little bit of poking around, and I saw that, like, they used real camp, because the camp was in session, they used real camp people. I'm like, was the camp also next to a meat packing? Like, there are some bearded dudes, there are some burly dudes in the background and the foreground. There are some pretty burly dudes in there. I think that this movie may have helped set the tone for movie dicks. Well-chosen guys.
There are some chef's kiss dicks in this movie.
I think they have names. I know that.
They do.
The guy who...
I'm blanking on the guy who races in the end. He's the same guy who dumps the shake on Spaz.
He's the guy who carries the torch in the beginning.
And he
spits on Jackie.
He does.
He spits on her.
I couldn't believe it. I didn't remember that.
I didn't either.
I could not believe that. I was just
if that was the actor's choice, he'd be gone if that was me.
Yeah.
Like,
well, there was no intimacy coaches back then, let alone you're lucky if you had anybody watching out for the animals back then, let alone the actors. But great casting. Ivan Reitman was supposed to direct Animal House, and the studio didn't have enough confidence in him, so they brought in John Landis. So he just produced Animal House, but he worked on it and did prep for like 2 years or something. So he was already well-versed in that school of comedy and also well-versed in what the writers of that were trying to get across, Doug Kenny and Harold Ramis. So when he's working on Meatballs, the writing, the same way that it would later in Caddyshack and the same way it did in Animal House, is all about the privileged versus the underprivileged, and about throwing all of these stones at the upper class.
Yeah.
And that's why it works.
Punching up.
And the worse the Camp Mohawk kids are, the more this movie works. And the kind of, you'll never win, but you can have a moral victory. Oh, wait, we did win anyway.
Right.
That is just perfectly handled. And it's something that people got away from in the comedy of the 80s and 90s. And now I watch a Marvel movie, and what passes for comedy, I just, it's so lazy and fratty and bro-ish. But at the time, it was always about punching up. And Chris Makepeace does it again, either the following year or the year after with My Bodyguard. He went into another classic. I'm seeing things that get back to that today, and it really makes me feel good. Shows like Stranger Things or, movies like... what was the one I suggested to you? Metal Lords. Things that are a return to anti-bully movies, which this is.
You watch The Big Bang Theory, which is supposed to be about nerdy guys, similar to... They're assholes. They're horrible people. They're horrible to each other. When they manage to climb out of their nerd status, They immediately use it against people.
I can't watch that show. I never could.
All they want, it's funny. It's like got that Seinfeld thing. It's like everything these people do is obnoxious. Yes, they're despicable people.
These kids are supposed to be kind to each other. There's a kind of like kinship that you share when you're not the popular kids.
You know, if somebody had said to me back then, like, why do you think Bill Murray's so cool? I might have been like, I don't know, I guess that's like the Hawaiian shirts and he always has something funny to say.
Right.
But in the end, I thought he was so cool because he was so nice. He was so kind.
Yeah. I watched a documentary on Wham recently, and his first day at his new school, George Michael, who was this kind of pudgy Greek kid who was always unpopular, the teacher said to the class, and she said his almost unpronounceable name in Greek, does anyone here want to kind of take care of him and show him around? And Andrew Ridgeley's hand went up and be like, yeah, I'll take care of him. And they were best friends.
How'd that work out?
Yeah, it worked out good for both of them. They were like, touring the world at 19. The first moment that I knew that I loved this movie was they're almost done packing up the buses, and the newsman wanders over to the Camp Mohawk buses, and Bill Murray, in the guise of Jerry Aldini, he just lays down this ridiculous patter about all of the ridiculous things that these rich kids get to do. Yasser Arafat rapping to the kids, the hunting the grizzly or whatever they do, Sexual Awareness Week where he gets to rape and pillage. That is straight out of SNL. Plants a flag. And it's like, you're going to love this movie. And gives an inkling of the stardom that Bill Murray was about to have. Such a good scene.
Yeah. Everything after that scene, whenever Bill Murray's like approaching the camera, you're like,
what's
leaning
next?
In, like, this should be good. And then you get all that. You get lots and lots of good Bill Murray riffing. His poker game with Rudy is hilarious.
Watching the cards, marking the cards.
I also realized watching the movie that there are several things that I think I did for the next 10, 20 years that I had gotten from Bill Murray. Like, there's no way that I'm not going to.
Yeah.
I picked up that. If somebody says, like, here, drink a little soda and try to burp, I think I'm going to go, oh, really? Rudy's very funny in that scene because Rudy has all the peanuts except for like 9.
And he goes to eat one of Bill's.
When he goes to eat one, he eats one of Bill's.
He's like, get out of here.
That's a great moment.
It's so
get
cute.
Out of here.
It shows that he gives as good as he gets. And he messes with Bill, too. It's great. Tripper, I should say. It's great.
Yeah, that was a real great scene. That poker game is great. I know that every movie is a collection of scenes that tells a story. And yet I'm always sort of amazed. Okay, Rudy only fails at sports once.
Right.
You know,
we think of him as this loser.
I like this guy who's like, if somebody said, like, and I had seen Meatballs, and then I hadn't seen it for 20 years, and you're like, tell me about Meatballs. Oh, it's this kid, he goes to camp, and every sport he tries to play, he's bad at it.
Right.
He has one scene where he does okay.
Well, what's cool is Murray, I got to stop calling him Bill Murray, Tripper immediately senses who Rudy is. And so he sees Rudy just sitting on his suitcase. And he gives him half his gum.
He bites it in half, by the way.
He bites it in half. A familiarity.
Which is extra. That's a familiarity. Yeah. You want half of this?
He catches him right. And then you get a sense that from that point on, he's keeping Rudy in the corner of his eye. Because he delivers him to his cabin master. And then later on, when he lets down the team or whatever, and he goes to run away, who finds him and brings him back? He picks him out as the kid. For some reason, that's known only to Tripper. He picks him out and is like, that's my guy. And I love that. And I like to think that that's the way life works. I like to think that someone's looking out for me. Tripper is a guardian angel. Tripper is the stranger on the street who pulls you back when a car's coming. Tripper is who we all want to encounter in some form in our life.
Yeah, that's why I say I wish Tripper had been at my camp, I met Trippers later. Find a Tripper.
Be the Tripper you want to be in the world.
When there's trouble, find a Tripper.
Look for the Trippers.
Look for the Trippers. Look for the Trippers. Anyway.
Made all the more impressive when you stop and think that this is the first starring role for both Bill Murray and Chris Makepeace. They're so natural on camera. Obviously, Bill Murray honed his naturalness on the Second City stage for a while,
Right.
and then in front of the camera with SNL, but nothing to denote just how stellar that performance would be. And Chris Makepeace to come and star opposite Bill Murray at that time. And it's such a sweet energy between the two. They had a screening, I believe, with that race at the end. And Ivan Reitman was like, that race does not work at all. You know, nobody gives a damn about Rudy. And so they pumped up the relationship more, put in a few more scenes like the poker scene, like the kind of him giving him instructions on doing the morning announcements before it goes on the CIT weekend. And all of a sudden, people are cheering at the end for Rudy because they were invested in the relationship between the two. It's a lesson that a lot of movies today could learn. If you have an emotional investment in the characters, the whole damn movie works.
Did you ever see Jurassic Park?
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember the two little kids in that movie? Did you give a damn about them?
I wanted them to die immediately so we could get on with the movie.
I didn't give a damn about them.
Yeah.
I knew that the whole point of the movie was for me to give a damn about them.
Also,
and they failed.
You know why? Because I think you and I were both suspect, and rightfully so, that the kids were only included in the movie to sell merchandise, to have little kids want to go on the ride where the
Tyrannosaurus Rex
comes out of the woods close to the roller coaster or whatever they're on.
The track ride,
Yeah, or to get the little binoculars like they had. Like it seemed mercenary. That grandfather who's so invested in the kids, like, what does he have? One scene with them?
Yeah. It's such a failed attempt. It's so weak. I have all that money and all that time and to have everything and do nothing with it. What I always say that Jurassic Park should have been a collection of scenes where Spielberg just steps in front of the camera and says, okay, in this scene, a herd of velociraptors run across a field. Watch. If he did that for 2 hours and showed various dinosaur scenes using the latest technology, I would have been like, wow.
Yeah.
Those were very real looking dinosaurs. That was fantastic. Instead, I walked out of there like, that movie sucked.
I will admit, there are parts of it I loved. I want more Samuel L. Jackson. I was happy with Newman. But every time a big blockbuster shoves characters in my face and it's like, here, these are the guys you identify with. No, 9 times out of 10, it's the villain. I was rooting for the dinosaurs.
Yeah.
So getting back to Meatballs.
Right.
Camp Mohawk, I guess, is Camp Jurassic Park. Right. Those guys are the velociraptors. And the greatest victory you can hope for is pulling down the shorts of the velociraptors. There are certain elements of the movie. Bill Murray doing his morning announcements and then having it be a device they can return to over and over again, a la MASH.
Mystery meat. Oh, right.
Mystery meat, some kind of...
It was veal, but the winner had said some kind of beef.
Which is great in itself. So you have those morning announcements. It's also a good decade before Good Morning Vietnam. You know, this is pre-WKRP. If after Meatballs, he had gotten his own series where it's like, you're a DJ or you're
a riffing DJ. Yeah.
A riffing DJ. You do talk radio. That would have been huge.
It would have been huge.
And yet that's why it's such a great movie, is that too is just a throwaway. There are elements of this movie that you would have been happy if they built the whole movie out around. And instead, it's just one of like 4 major elements and plot points.
These days, if you go to the execs with an idea that has 4 good ideas in it, they're going to be like, oh, we're breaking this up into 4 things.
I smell a franchise.
Right. Or like why would we, this alone will make us money on that. Let's do the other thing separately. I used to notice that in metal when I'm listening to heavy metal. I'd be like, it seems like these days the metal songs are somewhat simple and they have like the hook and they have the verses. But when I listen to Judas Priest, there's like 3 songs in Beyond the Realms of Death.
Yeah.
There's 3 things that could have been hits and they're all in the same song.
I'll do you one better because Judas Priest has a whole career of doing shit like that. One of my favorite songs of the Sunset Strip era of hair metal, Rat.
Okay.
Round and Round.
Uh-huh.
The chorus alone has like 3 different hooks, each of which any band would kill to make the hook of their song. But they got like a pre-chorus, they got a pre-pre-chorus, they got a chorus, then they got a return. It's like, holy hell, that song just hits. I love it. And that is not my genre.
I feel like it's a back then thing. I feel like back then it would be like...
You tried harder back then.
Yeah. And you put more into a single thing. And that's why you end up with like, this movie could have been a movie about a guy who makes morning announcements, which is essentially what you're saying.
Right.
You know? And it could have been. It wouldn't have been lacking. It would have been pretty damn good. Instead, they gave you all three good movies. They gave you the Porky's. They gave you the After School Special. They gave you the Animal House.
Right. One thing about the Camp Mohawk Olympiad, the cheerleaders for Camp Mohawk, do you know what they're singing?
It's all right. It's okay. We can beat them anyway.
No, that's North Star.
Oh, right.
North Star has that touchy-feely thing.
Oh, right.
What the cheerleaders at Camp Mohawk are singing is death, injury, blood, and brains. Mohawk, Mohawk, win again.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy? I mean, talk about leaning in to the whole
my God.
Privilege versus non-privilege.
How did I miss that?
I didn't catch that the first 100 times I saw this movie. I want to talk two more things, just Mohawk. One is Fink versus the Stomach.
Yeah.
And this is, of course, the hot dog eating contest featuring Larry Fink, which I think is short for
Finkelstein. Yeah.
And Larry Fink is going against the Stomach, who won the contest a number of years in a row. And that actor is another non-actor. He was a close friend of Ivan Reitman's. His friend had a band, and this guy, the Stomach, was a roadie for that band. And he looks like a roadie. And he has one line, and he screws it up.
What? No mustard?
Instead of saying, yeah, like a normal person, what? No mustard? He goes, what? No mustard? In a clipped way that's almost the bad kind of non-actor. But you forgive him anything because he looks the part. He's right out of Central Casting. He does a really good impression, as does Fink, of a guy who's eating 200 hot dogs or whatever.
Yeah, I was blown away by the realism in the hot dog eating scene.
You cannot, even in the faraway cuts, you cannot see the spit bucket on the floor. Yeah. Either of them.
It's incredible.
So I know you love this scene. Tell me a little bit about the Stomach versus Fink.
Okay. That's one of the reasons we're talking about Meatballs is because I'm not even sure what sparked it for me, but I decided to make a t-shirt, which is one of the things I do.
Let me just say very quickly, Dave is wearing one of my favorite t-shirts that he did, which is the Bodhisattva 8 times and then Look Out, which is, of course, from the song of the same name by Steely Dan. He did the WJAZ shirt that I wore in my YouTube show that everyone and their mother loved and ordered.
Yeah,
you're going to see best-selling shirt. You're going to see a lot of t-shirts or hear about a lot of t-shirts on this show. But anyway, continue.
Okay, so instead of this is the year Fink beat the Stomach, which is what Bill Murray said, I decided to put 1979 on a t-shirt and label it the year Fink beat the Stomach.
I love it.
It's an amazing scene.
It's great. And also, you can picture Tripper running off 24 shirts for the CITs and maybe Rudy with this logo on it because they all want to remember. And I'm sure that Fink went home with like 5 of them for his family. Dave, you and I both come from a time where everything from a Crazy Eddie campaign to a fun run for muscular dystrophy was commemorated in t-shirt form. That's what I love about your design on this, is that it's straight out of that era.
It's what I'm often going for. Young People's Day Camp.
Yeah.
They had a t-shirt with a smiley balloon.
That's what I was going to say.
Am I right?
The balloon with the smiley face.
That's from memory. That's a 40-year-old memory. That's a 45-year-old memory.
I'm reminded of Michael O'Donoghue, who, of course, was head writer on SNL and came out of the Lampoon and was just a brilliant comedic mind. He said once that when we die on our deathbeds, we're not going to be thinking about our loved ones who have passed. We're not going to be thinking of, oh, if I only had more time with my children. We're going to be thinking about feeling lucky 7, feeling 7 up. It's a cool, refreshing feeling, crystal clear and light. Like, we're going to be thinking of the useless commercial jingles that have been put in our head over and over on television and on the radio.
They're not so useless. I love
They're
them.
not useless. And
Right.
they've given us hours of joy, but that's what we're celebrating here pretty much on this podcast.
Yeah. Wouldn't you like to be a pepper too?
Another great t-shirt and satin jacket.
There's articles written about that commercial with the singing, dancing guy who was sort of like the Carmine Ragusa of Dr. Pepper.
David Naughton. From my favorite Wolfman movie, American Werewolf in London.
Guy who made American Werewolf in London, his wife saw the Dr. Pepper commercial and said, honey, this is the guy you should use for the werewolf movie.
Are you serious?
Yes. Yeah. I'm pretty sure.
Landis's wife picked him out.
Landis's wife told him to use the Dr. Pepper guy. This is the guy you should use. He's got the physicality because he was excellent dancer. It was a terrific commercial.
I met David Naughton at a Chiller convention. I had him sign a picture from American Werewolf in London, the one where his hand is becoming the wolf paw. And
the transformation.
He wrote Beware
which was the special effects transformation for a long time.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
He did not only the Be a Pepper commercial, but Making It, the song from Meatballs that is playing over the party scene where Bill Murray is dancing. I did not know this until the director's commentary, but do you know what song was playing actually when they all danced? That's right, Miss You by the Rolling Stones.
That's right.
Dave was doing the Mick Jagger duck walk.
That was a quick Mick Jagger duck walk.
I can't believe it, but we're always in sync.
Simpatico.
So, of course,
which I think makes sense. Miss You. There's no way they were going to get it. They weren't going to get it.
Too expensive.
Right. The replacement.
Perfect.
Thank God. It's an excellent replacement.
It really is. And
it might be better.
Making it. Yeah, I loved Making It when I was a kid.
Yeah. It was good. It was an anthem. It was fun. It was disco. It was adult. And it was nice.
Everything in this film is nice or sweet, except for a couple of missteps, which we talked about. But speaking of disco, the title track to Meatballs is sung by Rick Dees. Rick Dees was a DJ, and he had a one-hit wonder with Disco Duck. And he did...
which I remember.
Horrible. And he did, the Donald Duck impression.
Right.
Of that song. Inexplicable to me how popular this was. But he does this, and this Meatballs song is proof that he was a one-hit wonder and that his 5 minutes were up. Outside of Making It and Good Friend, this movie is filled with wall-to-wall music by Elmer Bernstein. He was the guy who did the music for Animal House. So Ivan Reitman already knew and liked him, and it was his music in Animal House that grounded the whole thing. He played it straight, and he did this wonderful, stately, classical score.
I was going to say, it was collegiate.
Collegiate in nature.
Yeah.
And so for Meatballs, he has sweet music where it's warranted, and he has kind of triumphant, almost Chariots of Fire-like music for the Olympiad. This is the first time we see the deft hand of Ivan Reitman as a director conducting all of these various parts that make this movie work. Pretty solid outing for a director.
He's like, you've got a bunch of funny people. I'm not going to do the funny. Whereas Rick Dees is like, oh, funny movie? Meatballs.
Yeah.
Like, no.
Yeah, Rick, why don't you change the lyrics and go sell it to Hard Bodies or something?
Yeah. Did you neglect a Mohawk thing you wanted to say? I feel like at one point you said I have 2 Mohawks.
Oh, yes. The last Mohawk thing I wanted to bring up, that horrible guy who spits at Jackie during the torch scene.
He spit enough that you could see it.
And then, at least she had leg warmers on. And then later on, he's the guy who races Rudy. And you see in the beginning, this kind of like, what? I got to race this 5-year-old? And so he's taking him for granted. Later, once he's Woody to Wabbit and he's ducking down and he gets a lead, you see the begrudging respect start. And by the end, he totally respects him. I don't know about you, but I remember the first time I watched it as a kid, and even sometimes after it, I was genuinely scared for Rudy when they got in the desolate area of the road and then in the woods.
It was scary.
Where there was no other adults watching. I swear to God, I thought he was just going to like body slam Rudy. and then
trip him or hit him with a rock, because they were shooting people with wrist rockets.
Yeah.
Like that slingshot. They were doing dangerous things.
I was really worried for him.
Because they kept sabotaging North Star competitors. So you thought they were going to sabotage Rudy in the woods.
Yeah.
You're like, well, is he going to get punji sticks? Is this guy going to body slam him?
Are some other Camp Mohawk guys going to come out and interfere with him?
It was a fair race. There's actually a background shot of a woman, an older counselor, consoling the loser of the race.
That's
in the background. And I'm like, don't console him. He spit on Jackie.
Yeah, he doesn't deserve it. I mentioned Woody the Wabbit. What is your favorite Bill Murray line in this whole movie? Because he's got some real buttes. There's It Just Doesn't Matter from his massive speech, which is one of the great Bill Murray moments on camera to this day. This is the year that Fink beats the stomach. There's a very fat pair of pants on the flagpole. But I think, to me, there's a line that's it's not even his best line in the monologue, but it's the lead-in to his scary monologue at night over the campfire, where he tells the story of the escaped mental lunatic with a hook for a hand from the hospital for the criminally insane at Two Pines. And it's just, the moon kills, you know.
I knew you were going to say that.
And I'm like, who even... It's almost that kind of thing of like Harrison Ford talking about George Lucas, I guess it looks good on the page, George, but you can't say this crap. Bill Murray makes it work. It's such a great, weird, bizarre lead-in that no one else but Tripper would say. And the phrase just sticks with me. The moon kills, you know.
I think it's partly like that thing that I've seen John Cleese talk about, where you have to have the faucet wide open. You have to have... I think that's one of the reasons Bill Murray is so good. He's wide open, turns off the filter entirely. And I guarantee there's a littered cutting room floor.
Probably.
But it's a guy who can say anything at any moment who says moon kills, you know.
That's true. He did have to edit a lot of Murray down because there was a lot of improv that goes on, especially, and you can tell which scenes, when he's playing a character. It's how you get gold, though. It's how you get gold. And there's an awful lot of magic, I'm sure, even on the cutting room floor.
Hollis, what do you know about shooting, taping a lot and then cutting away? You know nothing. You know nothing.
I'll tell you after I put this episode together.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, we just spent 3 hours making you 10 minutes of gold.
But those 10 minutes.
It's funny, when you were reading the other quote, or remembering/reading the other quotes, I'm like, those are all, I love the smell of napalm in the morning. Yeah. And those will never be my favorite lines. And from my t-shirts, it's hard to beat moon kills, you know.
We've talked about You Must Be the Short, Depressed Kid that we ordered, which sets up the whole movie, really.
That's why when you actually casually blurted that out as a possible name for the episode, and I think you're right. Yeah. I am that short, depressed kid they ordered. Rudy's not that short, is he? Is he short for his age?
He's short compared to Tripper, so it works.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, you've said he's a little on the tall side for his... he hasn't grown into his body yet. That's what he looks like, and it works.
He's I was gangly then at that age, too.
Finally, Ivan Reitman, who not just worked on Animal House as a producer, but produced the National Lampoon show off Broadway. So he worked with the best comedic talent of its time. But also, he had to work with every other actor who was not Bill Murray. I'm thinking of Morty. He kills it. Morty, they all call him Mickey. He's got that great shirt. When the hand goes up, the mouth goes shut.
I constantly consider remaking that shirt. Or maybe make one that says, when the hand goes up, shut the fuck up.
Yeah. Yeah. The
modernization. Version. Yeah. I'll add while you're on Morty that Mickey Mouse was originally Mortimer Mouse. The Disney character.
Oh,
but
nice.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a lot if they were.
It's not even necessary, to draw that connection to the high Mickey.
I love it. The more obscure you go, the more I love it. There's one part of the movie that I have a hard time buying. Morty obviously is being sold as the heaviest sleeper in the history of humankind. And it would all be easily cured if they were just like, what time does Morty take his sleeping pill? Oh, around this
That's it.
time.
A single
That's
line.
all I need. But you know me with a hole in the script, and this is going to be a recurring feature, the
Yeah,
hole in the
yeah,
script.
yeah.
But I buy it maybe even right up until they flip him,
The
you
flip,
know, and it's
which
just
is hilarious. It's a hilarious
rotate.
scene.
He's just like,
Yeah, and then they do the flip back to horizontal
yeah,
at the bottom of the steps.
yeah,
I don't know. It's an absurdity that doesn't exist in the rest of the film. So
yeah.
it's really out of place.
For anyone listening who has not seen the film, the camp counselor, who they constantly make fun of, is a notoriously, I assume, heavy sleeper. And throughout the film, it's a recurring gag where the camp counselors strap him to his cot and move him in various locations. One is up in a tree, another is out by the road, and finally, at credits end, he's in the middle of the lake on a barge. It strains believability to the point that you're absolutely right. It kind of sticks out like a sore thumb.
It's a very bizarre scene, and Hollis is absolutely right. A simple, what time does Morty take his sleeping pill?
That's all it would take.
Or a shot of Morty taking his sleeping pill. Or Morty saying, well, talk to me before I take my sleeping pill. Something.
Any or all of them.
Yeah, too easy to fix.
We should probably wrap up now. Is there something you wanted to bring up?
I'm going to ask you this at the end instead of the beginning.
Okay.
What are you watching lately?
What
are you currently watching?
I'm currently watching a true crime TV show. This is strange bedfellows.
It's going to keep happening?
Yeah. About a killer of gay men in New York. He dismembered them, put them in garbage bags, and then distributed those in various parks in New Jersey.
Good grief. I'm sorry I asked.
So I needed to watch Meatballs to give me a sense that there's still good in the world. What have you watched lately?
When you ask me, what are you watching besides Barney Miller, can always be the question.
Good.
Because there's so many Barney Millers, it turns out, and they're all so good.
It's true.
But the thing I'm watching that's not Barney Miller currently, which I just finished 2 seasons of in a week, was a show called The 100-Foot Wave. It is the story of big wave surfer Garrett McNamara and his quest to surf a 100-foot wave. And my first thought was, sports, it was so well done. It has a kindness. It fits the thing we're talking about. But it's about tow surfing. It's about when you take people out with a jet ski, because you cannot surf a big wave without a jet ski. Like normally when I see someone say like, oh, he throws the fastest ball ever thrown, I'm like, that you know of. People have been throwing balls for 1,000 years.
Right.
People have not been surfing these waves for 1,000 years. You need the power and the size of a jet ski. Yeah. But anyway, it is kind, sets aside competition, more about supporting each other. It's about family. It's done well. It's done beautifully. And it has a lot of heart and a lot of kindness. And I think it fits the thing we've been talking about.
Oh, that's cool. You know, I like things like that. And it seems to be a trend, one I'd like to see continue in documentaries dealing with sports, is that there's almost an element of wellness, which is such a big thing now as far as like becoming more self-aware, breeding positivity in your life, you know, having things that fulfill you and doing things that you like that build up your self-esteem. And, you know, so I really like anything like that in the world of athletics, because more often than not, there's a kind of toxic masculinity that...
Yeah, we've spent the last 20 years with sports stuff that's all like, if you don't lay it all on the line at any cost, why are you even there?
Yeah.
And it's so nice to get away from that. There are winners. People do win the championships and stuff, but that's just how the system works. It's how you get your check. That's how you get your sponsors and stuff.
What's the surfer's name?
It's based on this Maine surfer, Garrett McNamara.
You heard it here first, folks. 2023, the year McNamara beat the wave. Why don't we leave it there? Excellent chatting as usual, pal.
Fantastic. Always good to see you.
Always good to see you. I will see you soon. We're going to decide on what our new one is. I don't know what it is, but...
You know, you said, should we do 2 movies in a row? Like, isn't that kind of misleading? We did 279 movies in a row.
I know. That's why I feel carte blanche. We can do anything.
Let's just do 79, move on to 80.
I'm exhausted. Why don't we put a pin in it?
Hollis and Dave would like to thank you for enjoying Pop Culture Graveyard.